Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this episode of the Quantitative History webinar series organized by the University of Hong Kong, various institutions within the university. So today we are very happy to have our colleague from the Chinese University of Hong Kong, Professor Ying. So he, as many of you know, he is one of the still rising stars in the field of political economy and economic history of China. So Professor Bai got his PhD from the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology almost 8 years ago. He has published very widely in all the top economics journals, including Econometrica, QJE, the Journal of the European Economic Association, and then the Review of Economics and Statistics, as well as the International Economic Review. So his research interests cover development economics, economic history, and political economy of China. In particular, with a strong focus on the long-term economic persistence and impact of past events in Chinese history. So today, we're also very happy to have Professor Digsmåusion to be a discussant. So Professor Ma, by way of background, is a professor of economic history at the Faculty of History and Fellow of All Souls College at the University of Oxford. Professor Ma's expertise is in the long-term economic growth of East Asia, especially China. His research interests are very broad, including global history, the international comparison of living standards, institutions, legal traditions, and ideology, as well as human capital and productivity and the economic history of the silk industry. He has published very broadly as well on Asian and comparative economic history. He is the co-editor of the Cambridge Economic History of China. So today, of course, Professor Bai is going to speak on his recent research ideas, Mobilize People, the diffusion of communist ideology in China. So I'm not going to talk too much about what he's going to say. So I'm going to leave it all up to him and also to Professor Ma. But very quickly, just a reminder, we're going to follow the usual format as before. That is, the speaker will talk for an hour, followed by a discussion for about 15 minutes, and then we'll move to the Q&A part. So while both of them are talking, please leave your questions and comments in the Q&A box. And then at the end, my colleague, Professor Digsmåusion Ma, will take it on from there and select some questions and read them out for Professor Bai to address. Okay, without further ado, so let's welcome Professor Bai first.
Well, let me share my screen. Well, thanks for providing me this opportunity to present our recent work. The title is Ideas Mobilize People. We will focus on the diffusion of communist ideology in China, and we will investigate the influence of this diffusion on the political choices of the Chinese young. This is a joint work with Ruixue and Ruinan. Why do this research? We believe it is an interesting and important question. How do people get mobilized into collective action? And those actions sometimes totally change the trajectory of history. As an explanation of historical change, there's a debate between ideas and interests. There are a lot of studies on the role of interests the role of interests have been well documented in the literature. For instance, at an individual level, there are many studies on economic shock, on opportunity cost. At aggregate level, some studies on social networks. Similarly, the importance of ideas also has been well noted in the literature. For instance, Hirschman discusses how the ideas of capitalism initially emerged in Europe. And Mokel pointed out the importance of a set of ideas collectively known as the Enlightenment in creating the Industrial Revolution. However, also there are a lot of studies on the role, empirical studies on the role of interests. In contrast, the empirical work on the impact of ideas is relatively rare. The main reason is the impact of ideas is very elusive and difficult to prove, especially the impact of ideas on political actions. Then one general question is whether ideas can cause actions. It may not, because those ideas may just be used to cover one's material incentives. There's a lack of empirical work to answer these questions. So in this paper, we try to answer this question by focusing on one very specific ideas, namely the ideas of communism. So the spread of communist ideology might be one of the most significant political events of the 20th century. For a large part of the century, about 1/3 of people lived in communist countries. But we don't know too much about how such an ideology got diffused and how this ideology diffusion contributed to the rise of communism. But one fact is very clear. The Russian Revolution, the Bolshevik Revolution played a very important role. During a very short period after the Russian Revolution, Communist Party was founded in many countries. This is one country list. Germany, Poland, and to Japan. Okay, tens of countries, Communist Party was founded within a short period. China is one case out of them. Then in this paper, we will focus on China case. We will examine how the ideas of communism spread in China and shape individuals' political choices, political actions, which ultimately shape the fate of modern China. Moreover, China's case also provides a very useful context to help us understand this question. The main reason is that we exactly know how communist ideology was spread. It was spread through printed press. The most important press is the News magazine. So the News play a very important role in diffusing the communist ideology in China. So let's look at some background first. So the general background is a new culture movement, and it happened in 1910s to 20s. The main reason is some Chinese intellectuals such as Diwiąusion, Diająusion, and Hu Shi, they believe that we need to change culture. China need a new culture. We need a change in source, a change in culture. Without change in source, those constitutional changes, political changes would not be effective. Then they try to diffuse a lot of ideas about democracy and science, right? So, but then changed over time. It's partly due to those intellectuals was frustrated with the inadequacy of cultural changes. Then they start to considering more political actions. The turning point happened in 1919, the Treaty of Versailles. So according to this treaty, the interest of Germany in China, in Shandong province, would be transferred to Japan. And the Chinese intellectuals, although China was one of the winning country of the First World War, but the Chinese intellectual was disillusioned. And it triggered a national protest in China, started with the May 4th incidents. And the moral prestige of the West was undermined in China. In contrast, in June 1919, according to the Karahan Manifesto, the Russian government gave up all the interests they obtained in the past through unequal treaties. Then Russia became the symbol of justice and freedom. Then Chinese intellectuals start to think about that, maybe Russia can be used as a new role model. Then start to learn from Russia and start to diffuse communist ideology. So we can look at the two cover page, okay? So one is before 1919, the other is after 1919. So the pre-1919, the pre-1919 cover page, you will find that it involves literature issues. In contrast, after that, a lot of communist issues, communist ideology issues. We can do one text analysis to show the shift in ideology. We focus on the title of each article. On the left graph, we can calculate the share of articles related with different countries. You will find that this line, you will find that the share of articles related with Russia suddenly increased after 1919, and the communist and the news start to evolve a lot of issues about Russia. The right graph shows that we focus on two important categories. So the articles is communism related or literature related. You will find that the share of literature related articles remains stable and declined. The ratio, the share of communism related articles start to rise after 1919 and play a dominant role in the later part. In the later part. So moreover, we can calculate, we can look at the frequency of the top words in the new use. The left one is the pre-1919 new use. We highlight the communism related keywords in red. You will find that before 1919, there's no communism related words in the top 50. But after that, after 1919, the communism related words play a very important role. The top 2 and top 3 are labor Russia, the Russia and the nation, the socialism, Karl Marx and the revolution, Soviet play a very important role in the latter part. So we can observe the change in contents of the new use. Moreover, the new use, the diffusion of communist ideology contribute to the founding of the China's Communist Party in 1921. The leader of the new use, Chen Duxiu, was also the main founder of the Communist Party. The new use also became a theoretical journal for Communist Party after the founding of the CCP. So the new use covered 10 years, started from 1915 and ended in 1922. So it can be divided into two parts. The first 4 years, 1915 to 1918, does not include any contents of communism. After that, it starts to diffuse communist ideology. So this is the main background. Moreover, in every study on the origin of CCP, the role of new use has been mentioned in almost all studies on the origin of CCP, and a lot of anecdotal evidence to highlight the importance of the new use. For instance, Mao Zedong, he said that, I began to read this magazine while I was a student in the normal school, and admired the articles of Hu Shi and Chen Duxiu very much. They became, for a while, my models, replacing Liang Qichao and Kang Youwei, whom I had already discarded, and also mentioned by other Communist Party leaders such as Zhou Enlai and Deng Xiaoping. We think we can use this paragraph to make a summary, to highlight the importance of new use. It is difficult to overestimate the importance of the intellectuals whose collected around the new use for their writings molded the beliefs and attitudes of a whole generation of young students who were to achieve political prominence after the May 4th incident of 1919, and who were to become the leaders of the modern Chinese Revolution. So this is the background. We focus on, in China, the new use is a major channel of diffusing communist ideology. The new use cover 80 years. The first 4 years, no communist ideology related issues. The second 4 years diffuse a lot of communist ideology in China, and it contributes to the origin of the Communist Party. So, however, although we know how communist ideology diffused in China, but it's still very challenging to prove its impact. The reason is there are two challenges. The first is only a small educated population would be affected, was exposed to communist ideology, and those people in decades become the political pioneer, the political figure, the very important person. But who was it, right? Moreover, in empirical studies, we need to clearly define the treatment group, the people who were exposed to the communist ideology, and also we need to find a comparable control group to identify, to prove the impact of ideology diffusion on the other political outcomes. So this is the first challenge. The second challenge is that the circulation of the new use is endogenous. It might be correlated with the locality size, urbanization, and other economic characteristics. We need to address, we need to solve those endogenous issues. To address the two empirical challenges, we try to focus on one, we try to exploit a specific but important environment. We will focus on the Huangpu Military Academy. This academy, so in before 1924, the KMT, the Kuomintang, and the CCP form a coalition supported by Soviet Union. They established the Huangpu Academy, and this academy have huge influence on the Chinese politics in the 20th century for both KMT and the CCP. For KMT, the Jiang Jieshi formed one Huangpu clique as the major force of his military organization and the governance. For CCP, if we look at the early commanders of the Red Army, you will find that most of them came from Huangpu. Moreover, if you look at the founding muscles of the PI China, you will find that 5 out of the 10 were affiliated with the Huangpu Academy in 1920s. So Huangpu Academy is a very important academy in China history. We will focus on this very specific but important group. Moreover, more importantly, the data is available. So Huangpu Academy, especially for the first cohort, as a procedure, you need to fill one questionnaire. There's one admission survey. The survey was very detailed, even much more detailed than today's PhD application, we think. It not only provides family background, education, age, marriage, children, sibling, behavior habits such as smoking, drinking, religion, and also need to provide the reference who recommend them to Huangpu, and we can identify the identity of those references and who were CCP, who were KMT, for instance. Moreover, those cadets, those applicants need to provide detailed information on their life history. It's very important. We know the life history of each individual. Moreover, think about the Huangpu Academy. So there are a lot of cadets, hundreds of cadets. They received the training in one academy. The environment are the same. And the default is that they are KMT. Then the choice is whether they join CCP or not. It's free they have a free choice to join CCP or not. In the same environment, they have the freedom to make political choices. Moreover, they have different background. They came from different regions. They have different history. Some of them were exposed to communist ideology in the past. The other not. Then it's a very good, perfect laboratory to study the influence of communist ideology diffusion, exposure on political choices of those Chinese young, right? We think it's a very good context to examine the influence of communist ideology on action. So specifically, we focus on the first cohort of Huangpu. It includes 689 individuals. We have two types of variation. The first is the locality year level presence of an individual. Intuitively, because we have the detailed information of their life history, then we know where each individual was in each year. Okay, we know the location of each individual in each year. The second variation is the new use circulation. We know where the new use was circulated in each year. Okay, we have the we have the two types of information, the two types of variation. We combine the two to define the new use exposure. Intuitively, if one individual and the new use share the same locality year, then we will define the individual was exposed to the new use in this year. If one individual was exposed to the new use during 1919 to 1922, after 1919, then we will define the individual was exposed to communist ideology, right? Similarly, we also can define whether the individual was exposed to pre-1919 new use. So those individuals will be regarded as our treatment group, such as individual A, living in one locality where the post-1919 new use was available. So we need to find the control group, right? The control group will include the individuals like B, who had been to the same locality with A, but missed the channel. Okay, so the individual A and individual B had been to the same locality, but one was exposed to post-1919 new use, the other not. So if we was exposed to the post-1919 new use, it will be the treatment group. The other will be regarded as a control group. Empirically, we need to control for the locality fixed effect in the regression. Moreover, our estimate by design, it is an intention to treat effect. So this is the identification strategy. So let's first make a brief review of our main findings. We have three main findings. First, we find that exposure to communist ideology has a large impact on the probability of becoming a CCP member during the CCP inception stage. So we can calculate a persuasion rate following the persuasion literature. And we find that the persuasion rate at least is 18.9%. Compared to the persuasion literature, this is a very large persuasion rate. We think the main reason is our starting sample is a group of educated young radicals. This is why the persuasion rate is much higher than the other persuasion literature. Second, we examine the impact of economic background on CCP membership, and we find that economic background cannot predict CCP membership, which means that the CCP and non-CCP, they are pretty similar in economic characteristics and other family backgrounds. And we find there's no strong heterogeneous impact. We think the main reason is CCP, especially at its inception stage, face a lot of risk and uncertainty. It's very risky and uncertain. Then the economic consideration might not be the major driving force of joining CCP, right? So, but we have one, out of all the personal characteristics, the only significant factor is the number of CCP references. If you are recommended by CCP members to join the Huangpu, you will find that the CCP probability have higher probability of joining CCP. We think the number of CCP references can be used as one proxy of a social network. And moreover, we find that social network and there's some complementarity between social network and ideology exposure. This is the second finding. The third finding is that we know the life records of each individual. Then we can leverage this information to examine the long-term impact of ideology diffusion on the long-term political outcomes. We focus on two types of outcomes. The first is whether the member quit their party. Okay, the second is whether the member sacrifice for their party. Right? We focus on the CCP and we compare those CCP members driven by ideology and compare them with the other CCP members not driven by ideology. We find that if the CCP members driven by ideology, they would be less likely to quit the CCP and more likely to sacrifice for CCP. It suggests that the idea may be able to work along with other factors to have extended consequences. So we have the three major findings. We think in general, our studies can be related with four sets of literature. The first one is that we highlight the importance of ideas in shaping political and economic processes. There are a lot of studies to examine the impact of ideas, ideological exposure on voting, on policy making, for instance. But the evidence from a large-scale political and social movement is rare. So we think we are the first paper to examine the role of ideas in those type of large-scale political and social movements. Second, we compare the role of idea with the family background and the social networks. So the family background, it might be related with a long-standing literature in political sociology, and the role of social networks can contribute to the literature in political economy, which highlights the role of social networks. The third contribution is about leaders. And we know that leaders matter, right? Leader can play as a role model, leader can affect policy, can have huge influence on economic performance. But where do those leaders come from, right? So our findings can help us understand. Our findings show that ideas can shape leaders and their choices. So this is the third. The last but not the least, we contribute to help us understand the influence of media in different contexts. So we focus on the news, one magazine. We highlight its importance on the origin of CCP. Although there are a lot of anecdotal evidence say that the news play a very important role in the early stage of CCP, on the origin of CCP. But it is only one historical conjecture, right? There's no empirical evidence at all. We provide a very solid individual level analysis. Moreover, in this literature, in this set of literature, the influence of media, most of them focus on the macro regional patterns, and the individual level analysis is very valuable, is rare and very valuable. So we provide one individual level evidence, and we also examine the potential extended long-term consequences. So this is our contributions to the literature. So this is the introduction part. Let's look at, let's go over the data set. We focus on the first cohort of Huangpu Academy because the first cohort, the Huangpu Academy conducted one survey for the first cohort. And also, and moreover, the data missing is that we almost cover all the cadets in the first cohort. In total, there were 706 cadets, and our data set can cover 689, and the others might quit from the Huangpu Academy. We also collect some data on the other cohorts, but a lot of data selection. We only can cover 20% or 30% of all the cadets. But for the first cohort, we almost can cover the whole sample. The data, there are two major data sources. The first is Chen Yuhuan's book. It provides basic personal characteristics and the life history of all cadets. The second is more detailed personal background from the detailed survey. So the second did not cover all samples. The main reason is those first cohort of Huangpu have 4 teams. The admission, they admit the 4 teams into Huangpu. And there was one regional military academy in Guangzhou. Later, the Huangpu Academy merged this local military academy into Huangpu as the team 6. So for those team 6, the 6th team has no detailed survey. So we have 2 data sources. For the first data source, cover all samples. For the second source, only cover the first 4 teams. So this is the data source. Let's look at one example. So I think this is the most famous cadet in the first cohort, Xu Xiangqian, the founding master of the PR China. So this is the CV of Xu Xiangqian. From the CV, we can identify, we can code the birth year of Xu Xiangqian, the education, the reference, and we also can check the background of the referees, whether they are CCP or not. And we also know which team Xu Xiangqian was assigned to in Huangpu. And we know the CCP membership and the joining year of CCP, and the long-term political outcomes such as quit and sacrifice. So this is the basic characteristics. And we also have a detailed survey of Xu Xiangqian. For instance, we know the family occupation, the family economic status, and we know Xu Xiangqian's sibling, married or not, and the children. We also have detailed information on the behavior habits such as drinking and smoking and religious belief. Moreover, we have the detailed life history, and also we know also each cadet need to write down why the reason why they join Huangpu Academy. So it's a very interesting survey, and it provides a lot of control variables in our regression, in our data analysis. So the most important part is how to define the new use exposure. We focus on the life history of Xu Xiangqian here. We can code 5 life events of Xu Xiangqian, and based on those description, we know the location of Xu Xiangqian each year. Okay, we only provide the prefecture locality. We have 2 types of locality: the prefecture level and the county level. In this example, I only list the prefecture level. And this is the first step. Second, we check and we collect information on the new use circulation. We know where the new use was circulated in each year. Then we combine the two and check whether in this region there was new use exposure and new use circulation in this year. If the answer is yes, we will define that, oh, in this year, Xu Xiangqian was exposed to the new use. Okay, based on those information, we can define the new use exposure during the pre-1919 period and the new use exposure during the post-1919 period. The second is our main expanded variable, the exposure to communist ideology. We can look at some description patterns. So this is the first step, the locality year presence of the Huangpu cadets. This is the background. The darkness represents how many cadets in each prefecture. So over time, they changed and moved in China. Okay. So this is the first. This is the individual location in each year. So the second is the new use circulation. For each volume of the new use, they provide the circulation point. And this is the overtime change, 1915, 1916, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. So this is the new use circulation. We combine the two. So the background represents how many cadets in each prefecture. The red point represents the new use circulation. If in one read, if the background met the red points, then those individuals will defined as exposed to the new use in this year. So we will find the overtime pattern. Right. So this is data coding. So moreover, we construct the individual database, include those personal characteristics. Maybe we can have a look how these cadets look like. So this is the education and the social economic status. You will find that 96% of the cadets have complete the middle school education. At that period, okay, it's well educated, and 58% of all the cadets rank their family as middle income. So and 54% came from families with education or business tradition. Right? And we also find that they are pretty young. In 1924, the average age is 23. So overall, we think the Huangpu Academy, the cadets are a group of individuals, well educated, came from the middle income family, and they're pretty young. Okay, they're educated young from the middle income family. So this is the general description of the personal characteristics of the Huangpu death. So this is the data part. And using this individual data, we try to identify the impact of communist ideology diffusion on CCP membership. This equation represents our empirical specification. The dependent variable is a dummy variable, whether CCP or not. The major expanded variable is a new use exposure during 1919 to 22. And we also control for the new use exposure during the pre-1919 period. We have two types of exposure, two levels. The first is prefecture level, the second is county level. If we use the prefecture level exposure, we will include the prefecture fixed effect in the regression. If we use county level exposure, we will include county fixed effect in the regression. The county level exposure is much more accurate, but you have to include more county dummies in the regression, then we will lose a lot of variation. Then we will use prefecture level exposure as the baseline and use county level exposure as the robust check. And we also include the personal characteristics. For the first sample, we include the birth year fixed effect, education, and the number of CCP references, and also include team fixed effect. For the sample, the team 1 to 4 sample, we also include the family occupation, family economic status, the number of siblings, married, children, religion, and the smoking and drinking, those behavior habits. We cluster the standard error at home county level in the baseline, and we also use a two-way clustering standard error at the county and year level as a robust check. And also we do some non-parametric permutation to show the significance of our estimate. So this is a baseline empirical strategy. We think we have a strong assumption. Our identification assumption is that conditional on locality with controlling for those locality fixed effect, reflection fixed effect, or county fixed effect. We think the new use exposure during the post-1919 period is close to being randomly assigned. This is our assumption. We think it is reasonable because if you check the description of those individuals, you will find that individual relocation is likely to be primarily driven by economic opportunities and the other life events rather than the presence of the new use. Then we think the relocation is orthogonal with the new use circulation. Moreover, we think this assumption is testable, right? We can conduct one balance test. So we look at column 5 and column 7, each compare the treatment group and the control group with the inclusion of the locality fixed effect, right? You will find that with the inclusion of prefecture fixed effect and the county fixed effect, there are no significant difference between the treatment group and the control group. So the balancing test shows that at least for those observables, we find that the treatment group and the control group are very similar. So, but we need to discuss some endogeneity issues. For instance, the new use entry might be endogenous, right? It is possible that there exists individual sorting toward post-1919 new use. Later in the empirical analysis, we will have a closer look on those endogeneity issues and conduct various checks to address those concerns. So this is the identification strategy. Let's move to the empirical results. The results, we have 3 parts of results. The first is the impact of ideology exposure on CCP membership. The second, we will discuss how to interpret this effect. The third part is the ideology exposure on the future outcomes such as quit and sacrifice. So this is the baseline results. We focus on the last column. The last column includes all personal characteristics in the regression. we will find that we define the new use exposure at prefecture level. This variable is significantly positive, right? With the inclusion of more controls, this compared to column 1, you will find that although we include a lot of controls, the results remain very robust. Moreover, we can check all those characteristics, personal characteristics. So the CCP reference play a very important role, right? So whether you are recommended by CCP can affect your probability of joining the CCP. For the other control variables, only merit has a marginal significant negative impact on CCP membership. So most of control variables are insignificant. Second, we focus on county level exposure. You will find that the impact is positive, remain positive, and the magnitude is much larger than the baseline. The main reason is our new use exposure at the county level is much more accurate than the prefecture level. Later, we will compare the two coefficients and help us calculate the participation rate. So later I will discuss them in detail. So the most challenging part is to discuss the endogeneity issues, right? We have control for the prefecture fixed effect in the regression, which means that we have include the time invariant prefecture level omitter variables in the regression. But it is still possible that there exists endogenous entry of the new use, right? But we think it might not be a main concern because we include the new use exposure during the pre-1919 period. And we find that if we control for include the other control variables, the new use exposure during the pre-period have no significant impact. And only the new use exposure during the post-1990 period has a significantly positive impact, which means that the content matters, right? But the content have no regional variation at all. The content change is not related with regional characteristics. So second, we can conduct one robust check, one check. So we can divide the new use exposure into two categories according to the types of prefecture. So one type of prefecture is this type of prefecture always have new use, right? The other is not always. So then the new use exposure in this NY always prefecture is not affected by endogenous entry of the new use. But the second, new use not always, might be affected by the endogenous new use entry. We compare the two types of new use exposure, and we find that they are pretty similar. Although in the lower regression, the not always new use exposure, the effect is slightly larger than the always new use exposure, but the difference is not significant, which means that those endogenous entry is not a major concern. So the second concern is the individual sorting, right? Maybe somebody individual look for the new use, right? There's some individual sorting. So we have two checks on the individual sorting concern. The first is the location sequence of each individual remained unchanged, but we change the timing, right? We do some placebo relocation by assume one individual location was in the previous one or the next one, and then we can calculate some placebo exposure to communist ideology. If the locational preference play an important role, then those placebo exposure to the new use should have a significant positive impact on CCP membership. But we don't find that those placebo communist ideology exposure have a significant impact, right? It is not significant at all. Second, we can focus on the post-1919 variation. So we compare two types of individuals. The first is exposed to new use, post-1919 new use. And second, they had been to the same prefecture within the same period during the post-1990 period, but just missed the magazine, just missed the new use. The major variation came from the individual went to this prefecture, this county in 1923 when the new use is not available. So we define this group as just miss. So this is just miss post-1990 new use. And this is the real new use exposure. We compare the first row and the second row in the last row. You will find that compared to the just miss, if the people with new use exposure, the likelihood of joining the CCP is significantly higher. So this is the second. In the third and in the last but not the least, we control in the baseline we have controlled the locality fixed effect, the prefecture fixed effect. In one robust check, we can include the prefecture post 1919 fixed effect and only exploit the prefecture post period variation. So it's very similar with the comparison of new use exposure with just miss. We think the inclusion of prefecture fixed effect can help us solve the prefecture time invariant omitter variables. After the including of the prefecture post fixed effect can help us address the omitter variables at prefecture post level, but we cannot control for the prefecture year fixed effect because it's our variation is at prefecture year level. So this is the discussion on the endogenous issues. So we also provide many robust. We conduct many robust checks. So I have to skip most of them. Maybe we can discuss more in the Q&A session. But here I want to highlight the preservation rate. So we want to follow the literature to calculate the preservation rate. This is the definition of preservation rate. The YT, T is treatment group, C is control group. YT minus YC is the coefficient we estimate. Y0 can be proxied by YC, is the probability of CCP in the control group. But difficult here is ET and EC. EC is the reading rate in the control group. ET is the reading rate in the treatment group. But we have no information on the reading rate. For instance, if you lived in one prefecture with new use exposure, we don't know the likelihood of reading the new use, the real likelihood of reading the new use, right? So we need to do some assumption to help us calculate the preservation rate. So we first compare the prefecture level and the county level exposure. And we find that, at the prefecture level, the preservation rate is 13.3%. If we assume ET minus EC equal to 1, okay? So given this assumption, the preservation rate at prefecture level is 13.3. At the county level is 18.9, right? So the prefecture level preservation rate can be calculated based on the county level estimate. For instance, this is the county level preservation rate. This is the individual within in the county, and this is the individual who could access the new use in their prefecture, but not their county, right? So we find that this estimate 13.3 is very close to assuming a 0 reading probability if the new use is available outside the county but within the prefecture, which means that you live in Guangzhou, and in the Guangzhou city there's in Guangzou city you can in Guangzou city the new use is circulated, but you live in one county in Guangzhou prefecture, but not in the Guangzhou city, then your reading probability is nearly 0 by comparing the two coefficients. Then if it is the case, we think it's very safe to assume that, if you live in Foshan, in Dongguan, then your reading probability is nearly 0, right? Because in the county, within the prefecture, outside the county with new use circulation, your reading probability is nearly 0. Then if you're outside the prefecture, then the reading probability is nearly 0. It's a very safe assumption. So if EC is 0, then we can assume ET equal to 100%. So we can give an upper bound of ET. Then we have a low bound of perturbation rate at the county level. And we find that low bound is 18.9%. So this is the low bound of perturbation rate. Moreover, we want to understand the upper bound of perturbation rate. Then how to do that? We need to do some, so we need to divide the new use exposure into different categories. First, we compare the big city and the small city. And in the small city, we define small city as urban population is less than 100,000. The average for those small city group, the average city size is 50,000. Okay, urban population. If the total urban population is 50,000, then the target young cohort maybe 10%, maybe 5,000, for instance. If we only target male, then it's 2,500. If we target the educated person, then maybe only 1,000 or several hundred. Okay, in the small city, the only target population is only 1,000. So it's a small group. Then in the small, there's one bookstore and target this small group. Then for the individual in this small group, the likelihood to be exposed to the new use is very high. Then we assume it is 100%. Okay, so this is the same county with new use, the small city. This is a big city. You will find that this coefficient is much large, 0.26. Okay, based on this coefficient, we find that the perturbation rate following this equation, we find that the perturbation rate is 29.2%. Moreover, we can focus on a small group. So when the circulation point was at a cadet school, okay, so the individual, for instance, in 1920, studied in one school, and this school happened to sell new use, then I think it's very safe to assume that the probability, the reading probability for this individual is extremely high, nearly 100%. And we find that this coefficient is very large, 0.263, very similar with the small city. And based on these coefficients, we think that the perturbation rate is nearly 29% or 30%. So this is the upper bound of perturbation rate. So when we have no accurate information on the reading probability, but we can do some assumption, make some assumption to roughly estimate the perturbation rate to better speak to the perturbation literature. So this is the first. Then let's move on the interpretation. Our expanded variable is a post-1919 new use. We think it's a proxy of the post-1919 new use is a proxy of the diffusion of communist ideology. But we know that at that period, there might be other organizations or other magazines diffused communist ideology. So, however, we know that according to the anecdotes and the historical narrative, the new use is the most important one. So we try to find some evidence to support this point. So we collect a list to include all the journals who had diffused communist ideology, and we try to define their relationship. If, for instance, this is the new use, this is another magazine, the Young China. So we connect the two. If the two journals share the same editor, the same editorial office, then we can construct this network. The point represents one journal, and the size of a circle represents a year of duration. So to the circulation year, and the new use circulated 4 years during 1919 to 22. In contrast, for instance, this one, the weekly review was only circulated 1 year. The link represents the relationship between the two journals. So given this network, we can calculate the centrality of each journal. And we find that the new use is the most central one. Okay, so this is the first evidence to show that the new use is one of the most important journal periodical to diffuse communist ideology. Second, we collect the information on the other articles. The first is the Young China, because it has the same circulation duration with the new use. The second journal is the Guide Weekly, because the centrality is 0.65, is the second central. We collect the information of circulation of the Young China and the Guide Weekly, and we find that 47 of the cadets, the individuals, were exposed to the circulation of the two journals, but it overlapped with the new use. Out of them, 99% overlapped with the new use exposure. Moreover, given this information, we can divide the new use exposure during the post-1919 period into two categories without other communist ideology, communist magazines, or with the other communist magazines. We find that the effects are pretty similar. Okay, so this is the second check. The third one is that we try to collect the information on activist group. So we try to, based on the existing studies, we can identify 28 left-wing activist groups. Then we can define whether the individual was exposed to this group, okay, using a similar method. And we find that 31 were exposed to those groups and overlapped with the new use exposure. Moreover, we can divide the new use exposure into two categories based conditional on whether the individual were exposed to activist group or not. And we find that there's some complementarity. So if the new use exposure plus activist organization, the effect seems much larger than the new use without activist organization. There's some complementarity between organization and the new use exposure. But more importantly, even without any activist organization, the new use exposure still very significant, right? So this is the check. Overall, we think post the new use played a very important role in diffusing the communist ideology. We can regard it as one proxy of communist ideology diffusion. So this is the last but not the least one is whether individual mobilized by ideas can behave differently. So it's very difficult to test because you need to know the long-term history of each individual. But fortunately, we have those information. Then we can leverage this information to examine the long-term impact of ideas on political outcomes. So we focus on two, whether to quit or whether to sacrifice. And we can divide all individuals into 4 groups: KMT without new use exposure, KMT with new use, CCP without new use, and CCP with new use. We compare category 2 and 3, and we find that if the CCP members driven by ideology is unlikely to quit and more likely to sacrifice. So this is the third part. The next question is how to interpret the impact on future political outcomes. Because we know that one interpretation is that, initially you have ideological difference, then in the long run, your behavior are different. Okay, this is one interpretation. But we think one reasonable interpretation is that we know that most of revolutionaries were transformed to be committed communists in the revolution process. We think the initial difference in ideology can work along with other factors to influence important decisions. So they are particularly relevant in the turbulent times. So this is the main results. Let's make a summary. So we think ideas are relevant in many social and political movements, such as the American Revolution, the French Revolution, but due to typical challenges, little empirical evidence exists. Our studies show that provide solid empirical evidence to help us understand how ideas play an important role in the CCP's inception stage. So we provide the individual level analysis which is very rare in this set of literature. So we find that idea can cause action. So we're not sure whether you are surprised by this evidence. Maybe not, because especially if you had known that the importance of new use. Okay, if the importance of the new use is well known, then you will not be surprised by the results. But some results we think it's very surprising. For instance, we find the CCP and the KMT are pretty similar, right? An important group of individuals who fought with and against with each other. They try to kill each other in decades, but they are pretty similar. We think, oh, these results we did not expect. We think it's pretty surprising. Moreover, it also helps us understand in which scenario ideas would be particularly relevant. Our setting implies that, or our setting is that a set of ideas that guided a revolution with a great deal of uncertainty. In this setting, idea may play a very important role. So that's all for my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Ying. So now it's a time for discussion. We are very happy to invite Professor Digsmåa from University of Oxford to give some comments, discussion within 15 minutes. Then we will turn to the Q&A from the audience. Professor Ma.
Okay, thank you, Professor Ma as well. People often actually mistake the two of us, which is to my advantage, by the way. Thank you for inviting me to discuss this extremely interesting and very carefully worked out paper. Everybody can see my slides, right? You want me to turn on to the big screen? I guess everyone can hear me okay as well. Okay, so I will keep my comments relatively brief and general. The paper has really very interesting details and is quite meticulous, as like the other papers these scholars have worked on. So I won't really go into the technical part of it. I actually don't think I have much to question the technical part of it. I think some of the, maybe I'll leave for the audience to do that. So one of the things I just say, for people who are familiar with this group of scholars' work, particularly Ratio and Ying, is that, I would think of this as maybe the trilogy to some degree. The first paper on the civil service examination candidates was published in Econometrica, and also the recent paper in QJ is on the Hunan Army and Hunan elites. And one of the common running theme is actually they're focusing on elites. And I do think that's actually quite reasonable, important, because this is a bit of a departure away from idea. The other common theme about is that they all talk about, to a certain degree, revolution, regime change, and violence, right? So I want to, certainly in the case of Chinese context, the elites are very important for understanding violence, rebellion, and regime change. Some of the earlier work, people just think about interpreting violence as just coming out of triggered by starvation, disaster, corruption, or fiscal extraction, or just a brutal repression. Unfortunately, that's not always true. Violence requires a lot of organization, a lot of coordination. Itself is a completely different, especially the successful one, the ones that lead to regime change, is a major organization, and also network, which is captured in the second paper, which is that's about network. And this one, they are moving a bit further. There's network as well, but there's ideology. This is where I think where most of my comments will be focusing on. What is it really organization, network, or ideology, or all of them? It's probably all. Okay. For those of you who really heard through the paper, and I had an opportunity to hear it before and reading through it, is the paper is very clearly has its strengths.
Okay, Professor Ma, sorry, your slides looks frozen now. Maybe you can close and reopen.
Yeah. Okay. Is it moving?
It works now. Okay.
Okay. Maybe I would just keep it like that because Yeah, if that's okay, I would just leave it like that, which is easier for me. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So I think, first of all, I think focus on elites, as I said, there's good reasons to focus on elites, but from a methodological, technical point of view, the elites are relatively limited in number. So it actually makes the quantification econometrics much more tractable, and the data on elites are much more detailed. This is really, again, I'm not, in any way undermining the amount of work they have done, but as you can see in the presentation, they have worked really hard in extracting data from various pieces of information, but certainly data are much more available for the elites as well. And the other great thing, as you can see, again, it allows this kind of micro personal level studies, right? Individual level, you're not talking about even a unit. And this is, the kind of work really allows them to go beyond what mostly historians have done. They've spotted quite a few people talking about the rise of communism and communist ideology. And their work really gives you a much more concrete grasp with the data and systematic information. So I think this is really the strengths. Of course, I think with strengths, you always have trade-offs, right? So these trade-offs are probably necessary to a certain extent. One clear question, how does micro-level study link with aggregate picture, right? This is very, very clear. They focus on Diǎmpú cadets who are all, well, they were not elites at the beginning, but they are becoming elites. After they are limited to a number of several 700 people. And there's the bigger question of external, the econometricians would call external validity, right? So which I will raise a little bit. I don't think these problems they're inherent in this type of study, right? So it's not the fault of this particular study. And also when it comes to ideology, something I'll get back to a little bit later on, is there are things that are much more harder to quantify, and that's, how do we deal with that? And you could see that something is always lost. We try to focus on estimates because, after all, they're putting as much narrative as possible, but on the other hand, there's something, still is missing. So I don't think I need to go through it. This is one picture that shows very, very clearly the outcome that the people who are exposed to the New Use Journal are more likely to become communists. Okay. So let me sort of have some small questions. I don't think I want to raise the technical questions, but I have to say their work is really quite meticulous. They really sort through, again, they have acquired quite a lot of expertise in the field. They went through a lot about the persuasion rates and the reading rates, right? So that kind of tackles my question. Not familiar with data. It's always, in the end, it's always, in the legal sense, what's called circumstantial evidence, right? They prove people who are exposed, who are living in that area where there's newspaper, are more likely to join the party, but they don't really have exact proof that people living in the area actually read it, right? So they did all kind of upper and lower bound tests and so on. I wonder, are there any information on the quantities of circulation, the location of circulations? Where are these newspapers were actually sold? So it would be good the paper could provide a little bit more information on that, how information was really spread, because I know it's difficult to get systematic information, but rather than going through the reading rates, persuasion rates, it would be really good to supplement these information. So then let me get to the larger question that I'm really there, is that they have been able to test it very, very precisely at the cost of actually narrowing down the question, right? They are talking about communist ideas, but we're really thinking is, we are unclear that they have done a very good job looking at word frequency, but you don't really know what are the things in the journal that inspired these people. Is it the nationalistic context? Is it about the Russian Revolution? They have word frequencies, but we don't really know what really motivated these people. Those people who read it, went through these very, very difficult times, and they held on to the beliefs. What really made them to hold on to these beliefs, apart from the fact that they may have read it because they were in a place where there's New Use circulations, right? So let me go through a couple, because the tricky part of this is it's about diffusion ideology, but is it really ideology or it is really communist organization? So the measure they use is CCP membership, right? And membership is capturing a small aspect of it, particularly among the elites. Communist ideas were widely diffused. Some people don't even join the Communist Party. They become, they are left-leaning intellectuals and so on. So this is, in some sense, not exactly measured very well. And one thing that was very interesting, the Diwiąusion was a left-wing, magazine, right? Before 1990, it was not so much about communism. It was about Enlightenment thinkers, I think the name Diwiąusion was mentioned, Diwiąusion, but also Hu Si, who is not really a communist at all. These are new cultural movement people. So this is something that I think you can ask, probably people are already asking, is the external validity questions. Do these things apply to much wider communist believers? One thing that was that was quite interesting, these people are better educated than average. Right? So we usually know that people at the left wing tend to have better education coming from richer family, but you are here distinguishing between the Kuomintang and the communists. So there you don't see the differences, but it was the wider population, it will be quite different. So let me go through the organization part very, very quickly. This is a really very nice chart. It's not very easy to read, which I reproduce here. I just chopped them out of the paper. But let's look at this much more, sort of zoom into this one. So this is the time the Communist Manifesto was translated into Chinese. This is the time the Communist Party was founded, and China was red on the far right upper hand of it. So what does that mean? It means that as soon as the Communist Manifesto was translated, the Communist Party already formed in China, where that was not the case elsewhere. Elsewhere, manifesto was published, ideas were diffused. The party really came in much later. Well, why that was the case? There was a very simple answer, is to some degree that it was the import of organization. So I will go through the, this is the former states, all the events that were happening. So let me show you a couple of things that really shows that the communist ideas spread could be largely driven by the rise of the import of organization. So 1911, Xinhai Revolution, 1917, the Russian Revolution, and much more important, we know the 1919 May 4th movement. That's the pivotal turning point. But also, I think this is something very important. 1919 is the same time the founding of the Third Communist International. We all know that the Chinese Communist Party was heavily influenced by the Third Communist International. 1921, when the party was founded in Shanghai, in the French district, which was illegally having the meeting, was presided by Third International representatives. So in other words, barely had the idea even come in, organization really came in. And then you could see there's the first United Front. We know Sun Yat-sen turned to communism or the Russia as a model. So I think in this case, I'm saying here that there might be a case where it's not so much the idea, it's actually the organization, the network that really brought in the idea and in that regard. And so there is the sort of my final part is it didn't really answer why communism spread so quickly, because bear in mind, communist ideas were introduced very late, as late as the organizations. And I think, in one of the chapters written by Xu Chenggang in the Cambridge Economic History volume, he was asking the question, very few people heard of communism in the 1910s. Then bam, it just took off. Why was that case? Was there much larger cultural historical reasons that the communism was able to spread much more quickly, even beyond organizational part? So I'm asking this, sort of saying that these are things that really go beyond probably what we can measure, but these are things that's very, very important. So I just want to say whether the Diwiąusion, which he also said very meticulously documented, is playing the role. Is that more is that more about ideas, or does that serve a central network of places where people read and their ideas reinforced and to some degree? So anyway, apart from all of that, it's really, really a wonderful paper, in some way quite a groundbreaking, and I hopefully I will have time to answer more of the questions coming from the audience. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, Professor Ma. So, Bai-Ying, you can give a very brief response to Debbie's comments.
Thanks for my comments. I make a summary. So the first is the external validity. The second is whether the reading rate, whether the people was exposed to the news realism. The third is the influence of ideas or the influence of organization. Right. So the 3 questions. For the first 2 questions, I think we can compare our research design with something very similar with the field experiment. We select one village as treatment group, the other village as control group. We intervene in the treatment group, but we do not know whether the people in this village really receive the intervention or not. So it is an intention to treat estimate. So we don't know the reading rate, whether people really read it or not. But even we know that it's as empirical work is too endogenous, right? So then we put exert a lot of effort on the discussion of the reading rate. So this is the first one. The second, external validity. Oh yeah, this is a very good question. So as we mentioned, we think we're not sure whether it can be generalized. Personally, I believe it cannot be generalized to the common people. As I mentioned, is young radicals. They are young radicals. Because they are young radicals, then the preservation rate is higher. So so we focus on leaders. I think the candidate pool of the leaders is not the common people, right? It's only focused on a small group of elite, a small group of people in our society. But we think one check is useful is that we extend our sample to cover all the Huangpu cadets, to cover the subsequent cohorts. Although the sample is very selective, but we find that the findings are pretty similar with the first cohort. Then we think at least if we extend the sample to cover more cadets, okay, our results are still here. This is the second response. The third one is organization. We are working on it. So we think in general, we think, you and I are in the same prefecture and receive the exposure, right? So exposed to the new use. Maybe we can look at the influence of other people in the same prefecture in the same year, right? It may capture the influence of organization. We can somehow examine the social interaction among people to capture the influence of organization, because although we collect some information on organization, but maybe there are some omitted organizations, right? So maybe we can check the social interactions of the individuals who were in the same prefecture in the same year to partly address this concern. So okay, this is my short response. Professor Ma's comments.
Can I just say very quickly on a final point, maybe I didn't make my point very clearly. I was just saying more people read a new use, they have identity of belonging to communism rather than really learning communist ideology. That's what I think a little bit.
Yeah. I think,
you may not be able to distinguish that, but that's all right.
Yes. So I think it's very related with a question we are thinking is that how the ideas work. In one prefecture, there's 2 types of people. First, people, you are white paper, okay? You have no preference, no tendency. Then you read the new use. You are persuaded, okay, you believe in communist ideology. The other is that, you have this tendency, right? And you just, look, so it's perfectly match my tendency. Then you. So this is related with the question how the idea works. Maybe it's selection, right? Maybe it's persuasion. So we cannot differ the 2 mechanisms, we think. So thanks. Maybe now I need to go over those questions, right?
Sure. Yeah, I can pick and read the question for you. Yeah. So
okay.
Just follow me.
Yeah. So
well, the first is from Diṋ�usion. Very interesting and important topic. Do you think your conclusion can be generalized to most common people with less education and not from middle-class families?
Well, we don't know. I think it's very similar with the experiment study. The external validity is always one question. As I mentioned, maybe it's cannot, right? So we focus on, we admit that we focus on a group of young, educated people. So we're not sure whether it can be generalized to the common people. I think the
Okay.
second.
Yeah, the second is from Catherine Barnes. To expand on the question above, I'm curious how many people you think may have lied. For example, I'm fascinated that only 5% self-reported families with drinking and smoking. Lu-Xun's short stories are packed with drinkers and smokers. In an early slide, you listed changes in keywords and ranked those, and you listed the changes in keywords and ranked those in red that aligned with new thinking. If I understand correctly, the top ranked keyword was question. What does question mean? And why did you decide that it shouldn't be colored in red?
So the first one, in my life. So for the age, we find that for the age they lied. Okay, some of the cadets they lied, and we can compare because so during the subsequent studies we can cross check whether the age is accurate, is true or not. Then we can divide the sample into two categories, and even we drop those individuals who report wrong age. Because you are 35 years old, then you report, oh, I'm only 26 years old, then I'm eligible to attend to apply the Huangpu Academy. Then we can do those check to divide it somehow divide the cadets into honest and dishonest. So we can conduct this analysis, but in general we don't know. For the other information, we cannot check whether they lie or not. But for the birth age, we can check. The birth year, we can check. The second question is the question. So the word so the original text is Chinese. Then we can it's easy for us to those words are usually used in the communist literature. For instance, the socialism, the Soviet, and we arbitrary based on those information we define which words is communism related. For the keyword question, I think it's neutral, right? So it might be it's not definitely related with communism literature, and in the communist literatures, this keyword will be highlighted. But if you look at the pre-1919 keywords, the question is also be the number one. Okay, so this is the question. Okay, this is my response. Yeah. So
yeah, good. Thanks. So the next question, I guess this is from our colleague, Professor Jing Li. Would you happen to have heterogeneous effect on new use exposure? In particular, would the effects of new use exposure be different for better or more capable cadets based, for example, on their school performance? And relatedly, how does the exposure differentially affect subsequent performances of the cadets? For example, are those worse cadets more likely to die because of the exposure of new use, as in the killer incentive paper written by Anger et al.?
So we conduct some checks on the heterogeneity, and we don't find too much heterogeneity. For instance, we interact. So let me think. So the capability. So we interact with the education before the cadets, but we don't find too much heterogeneity. And we tried very hard to find the information of those cadets grade in Huangpu, and we know that they have grade. They have and also in the admission they have exam. They have the rank. So we hopefully we can find those information and as a proxy of their capability. So far we don't have too many proxies on their capability. So I think it's a very interesting hypothesis. If we have the relevant proxy, definitely we can do the test. Thanks for the suggestion. Yeah, it's a very good suggestion.
Okay, good. So next from Wanda Wang. Thank you, Professor Bai. One concern is that the new use was published less frequently and suspended several times after 1990, especially after 1921. Hence, to what extent could communism be effectively promoted through the new use after this year?
Yeah, we can. Yeah, we do some checks. For instance, we know how volume circulated in this year in these regions. And now we use the dummy variables, but we can construct one continuous measures on the new use exposure. So then it can partly address your concern, we think. Yeah.
Mm. Okay, so next from Ko Yu Chen. As far as I know, prefectures of Fu were nullified by the Beiyang government in 1914, the third year of the ROC era. So what is your specification of prefecture?
We use the 1990. We fixed the boundary in 1911. We use the prefecture map in 1911. In 1911, yeah.
Okay, good. The last question from Xiaobo Wang. Thanks for the lecture. It's a very interesting research. I want to ask that you have made a vocabulary cluster pre-1919 and post-1919. What's your criteria for defining whether a word belongs to communist ideology, such as labor, Russia, and so on?
So maybe some translation. Labor is in Chinese 劳动, right? So this so it's related with Marx literatures. So I think the translation. So if you look at the Chinese word, you will find it's tightly related with the Marxism literature. Then we choose by ourselves. Okay, we out of the top 50, then we check. Then we select whether it is frequently mentioned in communist literature or not. Then this is our criteria, our standard.
Okay, great. So we successfully addressed all the questions from audience. So the last minute is reserved for Professor Zhiwu Chen for any comments.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Zhichen. Yeah. Well, thank you both, Professor Bai and Professor Ma. So this very interesting research actually partly responds to the comments and questions from both Professor Ma and also from Wanda. I think from a marketing research perspective, usually, the best marketing is actually to put words in the mouth of the elites and the journalists, so that they can actually pick them up, pick up the words and then spread the messages on your behalf. So you don't need to be at the forefront talking to the not so educated, not so elite, or even not so middle class people. But as long as you can influence the influencers, they can promote things on your behalf at a much lower cost. So in other words, the new youth, the early issues of the new youth were so successful. They got the attention of all the educated people in the late 1910s and early 1920s. Then once the educated elites especially picked them up, then all those communist ideas would have a life of their own. And then whether the magazine itself was alive or still widely circulated did not matter as much anymore. So this is why, I guess, in order to promote Bai-Ying's good research, and then all those who are attending today's webinar will be the ones who will do the job on behalf of Professor Bai to promote his research on this and on other topics. So yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Professor Bai, another Professor Ma and Professor Chen. Thank you so much for the excellent discussion of this very interesting topic. Okay, so okay. By this chance, let me promote another event. Tomorrow we will have a QH lecture, also on a very similar topic about the importance of ideology in economic change. Professor Debbie Ma will give a talk on this topic on our Hong Kong Institute for the Humanities and the Social Science. So this event is in person, and we will also broadcast this event to the public. So welcome to attend and register for this event. Thank you so much.
Goodbye. So you will be at noon tomorrow. Yeah, you're all welcome to attend this talk physically in May Hall on the Hong Kong U campus.
Okay, good. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye bye. 谢谢马老师。